We are recording. So thank you everybody for joining us today. David is very kind recording the meeting and presenting because I am out of power where I live. Today is Wednesday, October 20 of 2021. We are stepping into Q4 of this year, and we have two topics for the meeting today. The first one is from Rob. There was an email yesterday on the SIG architecture and SIG API Machinery mailing lists with a heads up for this one. So I will give it to Rob if you want to open the discussion. David, maybe you want to, yes, you want to open the document. Thank you.
Rob, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
I think we lost Rob. I saw he was online a second ago, and now I don't see it on the. I don't see him on the list.
Okay. Do we want to jump to the next topic?
So I guess we move to the second topic, and then we come back to the first one when he joins back. Oh, Rob put a message in the chat.
Yeah, sorry for the issues there. I'm back online. Computer issue. Had to switch computers.
Good. So we introduced the topic. It's all on you to kick off the discussion.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. So Gateway API, as you probably know by now, is an official Kubernetes API in SIG network. We're developing it with CRDs though, and we're getting to the point where we're awfully close to beta, and we're trying that safely. Very familiar with Kubernetes upstream, where you just use feature gates to kind of guard, prevent a field from being set. That's one potential option here, but we're using CRDs, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of prior art. So the one option that I've considered after talking with a few people is we could, have a different idea here. Take advantage of the concept of using CRDs and say we're going to release stable and experimental versions of our CRDs. So every release includes all your stable features or all your experimental features. So think of that as the equivalent of all alpha true for a feature gate. But instead of trying to guard this with some kind of feature gate, we're just guarding it in the build process. We're effectively releasing two different versions of the API, and the user, the cluster admin, can decide which version they install or make available in their cluster. And of course, the other option is we already have a validating webhook. We could choose to implement feature gates with that. It would be a bit strange, but is technically possible. And I'm sure there are many, many other options out there, but I'm just wondering if anyone else has run into this, or if you as a SIG have any suggestions for how we could approach adding this kind of experimental field in the future.
I really like the idea of having a second version of the CRD manifest that contains the experimental fields. I do have a question about your conversion webhooks when you do that. I think it means that your conversion webhook needs to handle all the alpha fields so that you can deploy the same conversion webhook. Do I have that right?
I am very sorry. My audio output just switched on me all over again. So I'm very sorry that I missed your response there.
Oh, I'm actually not even sure that my audio came through well. I said I like the idea of having the separate manifest for the experimental version, and I was asking about the mechanics of the conversion webhook and whether it was going to have to handle all the alpha fields all the time, so that you would have a single conversion webhook and be able to handle a case where, handle the case where they switch from having the experimental to not, or from not having it to having it.
That's a really good question. We as of yet have not gone down the path of a conversion webhook. Obviously hope to avoid it if possible, but certainly if we're talking about releasing different versions of CRDs with experimental fields like this, then maybe we'd have to. That's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that one.
I have one comment in the similar direction. Obviously, when you change from stable to alpha and back, and you have old alpha fields in etcd, those won't get pruned. You won't see them. Like when you get objects, you won't see them while you're unstable, but they are still in etcd. So if you don't update objects and you go back to alpha, suddenly you have fields which you haven't seen before. And yeah, it's just like that. So there is some life cycle issue which is not so visible.
I think the same thing happens with our feature gates though, because we don't aggressively prune the data in SED. So if you don't modify the record, if you disable a feature gate, read it, and then later re-enable the feature gate and read it again, you still get the data. So I think
we don't prune them. This is the difference. In CRDs, we prune on read from etcd.
I see.
It's not a blocker, to be clear. I like the idea as well.
Is it acceptable in this case that, I don't know if this makes it any better or worse, but these kinds of transitions would likely be user initiated, right? Like it's the user that is intentionally or cluster admin, whoever that is intentionally transitioning between the experimental channel and stable release channel, for lack of a better term here. Does that mitigate or make the kinds of problems you're describing less bad because it's maybe not unexpected that they would, if you could document clearly that when you make this change, these things can happen. So I don't know, is that an acceptable thing that we can document our way out of?
I think yes.
I think so as well.
Okay. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing everyone right, it sounds like the experimental versions of CRDs is actually a reasonable idea and preferable to something like feature gates implemented via webhook.
Yeah, I think it's a lot simpler to do. Here's a different manifest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I thought this was going to be a much more complicated topic than this, but I'm glad that this actually makes sense. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
All right. We may have lost Fede. Nope, there he is.
I'm here, yes, but my internet connection is very bad. So thank you, Rob and David and Stefan. Maybe we move to the second topic. Do we have Abu today? If not, Stefan, can you walk us through?
Yeah, so I think he's not here, right? Otherwise he has a voice. I don't see him.
No.
All right, so I guess I know why he put it here. Mike, Schweitzer and Tim, they are discussing what we had in a former meeting about consistency of reads before readiness of the API server. And we decided to have some header variant where you can tell the server, I want consistent reads, and tell me if you return something which is not consistent. And after this meeting, in the discussion with Jordan wasn't there, we found out that CRDs implement something different, namely, as long as the informers for CRDs are not up in the API server, like they're not synchronized, we return 503 for discovery and for gets, which would lead to 404. So we don't delegate to the dedicated API server in the case we don't know the group version, something like that. It's implemented, so we have this behavior today, and yeah, we figured that what we are missing for the garbage collection use case, so the problem was the garbage collection and maybe also namespace controller, they might lose or drop data because they are not aware that a 404 is not really a 404. And we figure that what we are missing is that we just replicate the same behavior for the API service informer in the aggregator, basically returning 503 as well, as long as it's not up. It's a little different. Maybe David remembers, it's not just the informer, there's a controller involved which has to process all objects once, but this code is already in place. What the PR here, I think this is the one does, it adds something similar to, structurally similar to the post hooks. So you can not register a function, you can register a signal, and every delegated API server can close its signal, basically telling the kube aggregator, which is the outside of the chain, all my muxes, my multiplexers are complete. So there is every object, every resource registered. So there will never be a 404 because my informer is not ready. And discovery is complete. And we added this to the delegation chain, and it's pretty clean actually. And we can replace the CID logic we have already and generalize it to the delegation chain, basically. Same behavior as before, same downsides. Implementation is simple.
So I think I see how that works for API services once you load them to know what group version they refer to, but I'm not clear how you would be able to return a 503 from discovery before the informer synced. Doesn't that break all discovery up the chain?
It does the same thing for CIDs today.
I guess I'm not familiar with that. So are you saying that before the CRD informer syncs, we get a 503 from the root discovery call to discover all groups?
I have to look into the code for the root one, but probably we should do that. I'm not sure. This is a detail about GC. We can discuss what GC requires. Which discovery does it use?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty important detail.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. My assumption is this blocks the root one as well. Yes. The implementation here.
I think that's worth confirming. I did not expect that to be the case.
It is. But can you confirm it's important to block that because GC depends on it? We can look into the code whether that's the case, but maybe you remember.
I don't know.
Okay. It's a very good point. We will check.
I do know that kube control uses it for sure.
It does.
Which means that it's likely that our default REST mappers use it. Which means it's likely to be used, but I do not know.
Yeah. If we have an owner reference, we know the resource group version, right? So we could do a different check, but probably we don't.
You don't actually. You know the kind, but you don't know the group of the resource.
I remember.
So I don't see how you could skip it, but
you're right.
Yeah.
We will check. My question is, in general, is this something we want to stop the bleeding? If we want something more advanced, and I think Mike and Abu have plans for that. I'm not sure where they are. I think it's an enhancement to have linked maybe. So this one fixes GC. That's the goal, and the only goal. There's nothing beyond that.
I think that meets the minimum bar to have what we have today function more reliably if your load balancer is broken. I really do want to know what it does for that root discovery, because it would surprise me if we 503'd it. But And if we do, then obviously extending that seems okay. But if we do not, I'd want to reserve the right to think about what happens if you 503 at that top level.
Yeah, I see that.
And I might even ask for like, what does kube control do when you do this? Does it ever self-recover? Because in a self-managed cluster, you may need to have something to allow kube control to run enough to be able to fix your cluster.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I will sync with Lukáš, and we will analyze what we have in code today, behavior, and whether this changes anything. That's a good point. Thanks.
I don't think I have any further questions.
Stefan, can I ask you to make sure that you pass this feedback to Abu, since he's not here?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, that's good. Is that the topic? You know, did we exhausted everything that we needed to talk about that one here?
Yeah, you can click on the links if we can find something more. I'm not sure. We talked about the second one, this one, yeah. The issue is probably the one from Mike. I'm not sure why it's closed. And this one is a draft for the enhancement. But to discuss that, we need both of them.
Yeah, I'm a little less sure that this one is important if we get the discovery doing what you described already.
Yeah, I just heard from Abu that Mike has different use cases, but I cannot, I don't know the details.
Okay, well, if Abu wants to put this back on the agenda for 2 weeks, that's fine with me.
I will tell him.
It does look different than what you just described.
KubeCon last Friday. As soon as the video is available, I will post it in the channel so people can see it. We had 2 talks, one on server-side apply for controllers, and the other one on priority and fairness by Abu, and the other one by Joe. Very good. Well, you know, we a lot of time today. I want to apologize for the technical difficulties. Thank you, David, for running and recording this. And thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you. Have a good Wednesday.
Yeah.